Yo, what's good, dudes? So I got another video for you. Today I'm going to be showing off some of the recent Mythic Plus weekends that we just had that's just gone, and hopefully we can have another weekend coming up soon as well. So if you want to be checking that stuff out, come check me out on twitch.tv/Psybear_TV if you want to be seeing some Feral Druid and just general Druid testing as well. Like I'm doing some balance and stuff as well, probably some Resto and Guardian Druid as we get closer to release. But this is one of the builds that I was playing today. I don't know if you can see this very super well, but it's basically a double claw rake, mass AoE. It's got Convoke, doesn't have Adaptive, doesn't have Feral Frenzy, got Carnivorous Instinct, Carnivorous Instincts? Carnivorous Invigor, I can't remember what it is. CI, and then it's got Apex and all that kind of stuff. Now, we know Rip and Tear right now is kind of doing more damage than it should be, but that's kind of like the situation of where we're at. And that's the build I'm generally playing. So I've been messing around. I messed around with a whole bunch of builds. I tried some with Convoke, some without, some with Adaptive, some with Feral Frenzy, yada yada yada. I even tried going for an Infected Wounds build as well. But right now, Sudden Ambush is bugged and it's not actually correctly working. So if you double claw Rake as you have a Sudden Ambush proc, it actually doesn't give the second Rake mob your Sudden Ambush 60% increased damage. And it doesn't give it to the primary mob either. So it actually just removes Sudden Ambush from your rotation if you take double clawed Rake and it procs, which is really awkward because that's actually would be a really cool combination of having Apex and keys plus Sudden Ambush plus like Infected Wounds, where you're getting these 90% plus, well, the 60% from Sudden Ambush and then an additional 30%, and then you do the math and you figure out how much it actually is improved by whatever. Getting a big increased damage to your Rake would be kind of cool. So a lot of my priority in this still, though, even without Sudden Ambush and stuff, is trying to get Rake on as many mobs as possible. And then outside of that, just kind of procking, using my Apex procs as often as I can whenever they're procking. And then always Primal Wrathing. A lot of people have been asking me, Psy, when you Primal Wrathing, when you Ferocious Biting. I am always Primal Wrathing unless I get a Ferocious Bite proc. The reason being, even on like 2 targets, your rip ticks very quickly from your Primal Wrath. It's only 12 seconds, I think, which is very quick. And you have Circle, obviously, causing it to be ticking quicker. But then on top of that, Tear Open Wound. So the way that Tear Open Wound works, now that's the talent where when you Primal Wrath rip, it causes your target suffering from rip to take an amount of damage from that rip immediately, right? So the way you have to do it is you have to do an initial Primal Wrath, and the first Primal Wrath, if mobs do not have rip on them and you do a Primal Wrath, it does not kind of cause that Tear Open Wound effect. So it's only the second Primal Wrath that happens, which means that you always want to make sure that mobs have rip on them, so when you do your second Primal Wrath, you're proccing Tear Open Wound. Now you always want to make sure as well that that rip remainder is at least 4 seconds, because Tear Open Wounds damage will be based on how many seconds are left of that rip. Based on like if it's you want a minimum of 4 seconds still left. If it's above 4 seconds, it's 6 seconds, it's 8 seconds, that's fine. That's totally cool. It'll still do the same amount of damage. But if it's lower than that, if it's 3 seconds, then you'll only get then you'll miss a tick. If it's 2 seconds, you'll miss a tick. Or you miss 2 ticks, right? So you want to make sure that you have at least 4 seconds on your rips on every single mob, which means you need to constantly be Primal Wrathing. And that's kind of the understanding behind it, based on my testing so far. That's how it's been working. So you do want to make sure that you're spreading rip as much as possible, and then you're just apexing for your bites. And that's how you're doing your bite damage with your Rampant Frosty and stuff. So that's basically what I'm trying to do in every single pull. Spread rakes as much as possible. Now, a little tip as well for spreading rake, which is actually kind of cool, which is what I have been looking at. To keep in mind, I guess like mathematically, the best way to be spreading your rakes and target swapping is looking at how many mobs are in the pack. If you ever have an even or an odd number of mobs, if you have an even number of mobs, say you have 4 mobs, you can rake, then you target swap to a target without rake, and then you'd rake again. Now, all 4 mobs have rake on them. However, if you have 4 mobs and you rake a mob and then you don't change target and you rake again, now only 3 mobs have rake on them. So whenever you have an even number of mobs, you always want to be tab targeting. But say you had 3 mobs in that pack, then you can rake and then you can rake again without having to switch targets, and you will still have 100% of the mobs being affected by rake. And that will then extend onto 5 targets. So for 5 targets, the way that you would rake spread is to rake 1 target, switch to a target without any rake at all, rake that target. Now you have 4 targets with rake on. So then you would just rake again immediately without switching target, and all 5 mobs would have rake on them, right? It sounds very simplistic, but it's just like a good way of kind of getting used to thinking about how you're going to be rake spreading optimally in Mythic Plus in order to make sure that you have the most amount of rakes as possible, as quickly as possible, without having to kind of cause any issues with like with awkward swapping of targets and things like that. Now, in general, like, how has Feral been? Now that we've spoken a little bit about the rotation and stuff like that, because it's not mega complex, really. It's kind of a little bit easy, but there's things that you're trying to remember at all times, like trying to maximize Tiger Fury uptime and all that kind of stuff, and rake spreading and primal wrathing and all that kind of stuff. But the big thing right now is what build is the strongest, and I think that's going to come down to just more testing generally, and like kind of seeing a bigger range of dungeons to get a better sample pool, as well seeing it'll come down to like number tuning and what if Blizzard's still going to do things that are going to make changes to Feral Druid. But for me, like, whether you should take Adaptive Swarm or not, I would think, generally speaking, these higher kind of like bleed priority builds I think will be better in slightly higher level keys. So if you're doing like a heroic dungeon or a +2, it's probably going to be something where you're not going to want to play adaptive because things are going to die too quickly, and you're probably going to want to play, you know, very, very fast-paced, instant burst damage kind of things. Even Feral Frenzy would be okay for like boss damage and stuff. But once you start to get to the high-level keys, which is what most people are going to be doing, and you get to the 10s, the 12s, 15s, and stuff on those first few weeks of the expansion, I think Adaptive Swarm is going to be very good. It will be very good. I still think Convoke has a place, but I think that you'll be able to absolutely skip it if you want to. But I'm thinking on like a Tyrannical week, what could be good is Convoke, or 1 minute Convoke, and Feral Frenzy. And I think that could be really good. And I will be doing, like, you know, when I get comfortable stuff, I'll be doing these different builds and uploading different videos of different Mythic Plus builds. But I think that could be pretty cool. I think getting like 1 minute Convoke and Feral Frenzy, really good. And Adaptive Swarm as well, actually. You can get that as well on single target. There's going to be really good ways for Feral to increase our single target without completely sacrificing all of our AoE, and we're basically going to be able to change out around a couple little talents and tweak them just very slightly, and have basically single target burst, retain single target, like continuous single target, consistent, and then also having all the other stuff as well with all of our AoE, so that's really, really good. The one thing I am kind of scared about with these various builds, I do think that there's a lot of stuff that is actually really like viable, and is very comparable with one another in terms of these different builds. The thing I am worried about is the number tuning on how they're going to change some of these things for us, or if they will. I don't think that we are that broken right now. Like, I know we're looking at the DPS meter here and stuff, but I've seen Warlocks pulling like 600k burst, 700k burst, and stuff like that. Same with BM Hunter, which we know is broken. Apparently there's a talent with Warlock which is causing them to be broken. But we also know that World of Warcraft does not ship in a complete state all the time. There are bugs. Look at SEF. SEF for Monk, for Windwalker, has been bugged for like years. You know what I'm saying? That was bugged in BFA. That was bugged before BFA, I think. And it's still bugged to this day, I think. So, it's at least was bugged even when Dragonflight, Shadowlands launched. So, you know, we'll see how those things kind of go, but I would say that I'm kind of worried about how they're going to tune things for us. I think in Mythic Plus, more so than single target right now, like, we're really solid with consistent damage, with burst damage, with single target. Well, our single target is okay. We've lost a lot of our burst from Mythic Plus builds, like Mythic Plus single target. We have burst in AoE, that's fine, with Terra Open and Apex and Saber and Rip and Tear and all that stuff. We have burst there. The thing I'm worried about is like getting burst on single target with an AoE build, because we're very bleed heavy now. They've stripped damage away from our Ferocious Bite and our Shred and stuff, and more of our damage has gone into our Rip and our Rake, which is slow damage, and the thing has to live for a long time and all that kind of stuff. So we've kind of like, they've kind of moved us away from burst damage. So I think it's important to understand why that's happened and not be afraid and not be complaining and being like, oh, well, what the hell, we don't have any burst now. Just understand that we have bleed damage, so you can't have everything. I mean, some specs do, but obviously that's bad for the game. Those are specs that shouldn't have everything, that do have everything, whatever, right? So, yeah, probably keep that in mind. But I'm hearing reports as well of some cursed build right now on single target that's doing like 50k overall and stuff. So, or like consistent, like pure single target. So I want to check that out. I'll be probably making a video on that if I can find information on that from the theory crafters and see how that's going. But I kind of just wanted to show some clips and stuff of the gameplay, show the different builds. Well, like talk about some of the different builds that I've been playing with. But in general right now, it seems like there's a lot of stuff that's pretty competitive, and it comes down to like personal preference right now. But there's a big emphasis on obviously those like that capstone area. But double chord rake is going to be really cool. It's working intuitively now. Tear open wound and apex procs and all that kind of stuff. It's all looking really, really awesome, and I cannot wait to get into Dragonflight, and I cannot wait for you guys, if you don't have beta, to be able to experience it on PTR when it goes live. We're thinking October 26th, I think is what it's probably going to be live. So on the PTR, right? Where you'll be able to test all the new builds and everything in Shadowlands settings, but with all the new talents. So can't wait for you guys to be able to test it. It's really exciting. It's a really fun time to be playing Feral. I'm loving the gameplay. I'm loving the different builds and the choice and having reason and rationale to take different things and it actually be a reasonable decision to say, hey, I want to play this build. I want to play double chord rake with infected wounds, and it'd be like, yeah, you could probably make that work, or like, you know, I want to play Convoke or Adaptive Swarm, or maybe even Incon. Maybe even Incon, we'll see. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed just like a little bit of this gameplay, and I'll see you soon for more Mythic Plus.